Welcome back, my night readers. We are jumping right into our newest read, Royally Surprised. Here we go. Royally Surprised. I took a deep breath of fresh air as the sun danced across my face. It was a day like any other, yet I could feel something stirring in the air. I just couldn't put my finger on what it was. Something was telling me that I should look my best today, so I allotted myself a few extra minutes to do so. Just as I finished, there was a loud knock on the door. Nothing could have prepared me for what was coming next. It felt like a whirlwind as I, along with several other of the neighboring young women, were quickly ushered out to the town square of our small town. Hurry, line up nicely now. The prince will be here any moment. Smile, be polite, do your best. The well-dressed man encouraged with authority dripping from his words. Today is the day that the prince will be selecting a potential bride. Gasps could be heard throughout the crowd. Just as I was attempting to wrap my head around what was happening, the royal carriage, accompanied by several men on horseback, came into view. A masked man, the leader of the guard, led the way. The remainder of the guardsmen followed closely behind the carriage. I could feel my heart beating wildly as they walked the line of girls, coming to a stop directly in front of me. The masked man whispered something to the prince, and the prince nodded before they proceeded to ask a series of questions. If I'm being honest, it felt as though we were being interrogated. As the questions concluded, the masked guard nodded towards me once more. The prince nodded, seemingly in agreement. We'll take her, the guard announced. By order of the crown, you have half an hour to gather your belongings and say your goodbyes, he said, nodding at me. My jaw dropped. Was this actually happening? I nodded silently and hurried on my way. We had all heard the rumors of the ruthlessness of the prince and his guard, so, although in shock, and not fully sure that I actually wanted to go, I dared not say or do anything to go against their wishes. The 30 minutes seemed to fly by as I packed my belongings and said my goodbyes to the couple of friends. They were all I had left, as my parents had died in an accident the year before. Once back at the carriage, the prince extended his arm, motioning for me to climb in. I was shocked when the masked guard climbed in behind me, rather than the prince. I watched dumbfounded as the prince proceeded to the front of the carriage, climbing up beside the driver. That figures. He plucks me out of my little world, is taking me away from everything and everyone that I know and love, and doesn't even have the decency to accompany me? I couldn't help but mutter under my breath. You'd prefer him to be back here with you? I'm sure I could arrange that. The masked man replied. No, I'm sure you're better company anyway, I said with a sigh. Why is that? Well, it's just that I can't imagine a prince who seems to think it's okay to come snatch people from their lives, and then not even have the decency to be there for the awkward, scary even, ride towards their new lives, can be a very good person. Not to mention the fact that his reputation precedes him. Is that so? And what exactly have you heard about him? Well, aside from the fact that few have ever seen him, he is said to be ruthless and lead with an iron fist. It is also said that he shows no emotion. Rumors say that it's because he lacks them, far from the Prince Charming little girls read about in storybooks. But, so you believe him to be a monster? You didn't let me finish. Okay, go ahead. But those are mere rumors, although I do believe rumors tend to be laced in some truth. So, I've always assumed he had to be both brave and strong. Making the kind of decisions that a prince is forced to can't be easy. And showing emotion to potential enemies, or anyone else aside from his trusted few, could be seen as weakness and vulnerability. So then you don't think he's a monster? I didn't say that. I guess time will have to tell. Although he does seem to lack basic manners, as he's not back here with me right now. And we can't forget about the whole part where he just plucked me from my familiar, comfortable life, without knowing me or considering how it would affect me. Why did he pick me anyway? Perhaps because you seem so obedient and easygoing. Oh, well that just figures. I'm kidding. Obviously. With that, I shot him a dirty look. Jerk. However, he wasn't wrong. It was no secret that I'm strong-willed and can be a bit difficult at times. Look out the window, he said, holding back the curtain. What? I questioned, not sure what I was supposed to be looking for, as all I could see were the guards. Look at their faces. Any look familiar? As I looked from face to face, I realized I did recognize a few. There was Will, the nice guy who had started working at the local store about 6 months ago. Oh, and John. whom I saw daily as he started helping my neighbor, Mr. Smith, on his farm about 6 months ago also. As I continued looking, I spotted 2 more familiar faces. I looked to the masked man sitting across from me questioningly. Yes, I see several familiar faces, but I don't understand. Your prince isn't just some fool who selects any girl on a whim to be his potential princess. He had members of the guard planted in all neighboring towns for the last several months, scouting for any potential suitable women. Of the few that were found, he observed each for himself for several days before making his final decision. And make no mistake, even now, you are not guaranteed the princess position. I was shocked to learn this, yet I was determined to maintain a strong demeanor, just like the prince. What if he decides that I'm not to his liking? What is he going to do? Kill me and disregard me like some rejected toy? Or do I just become some maid expected to serve his every whim? Perhaps I should pay more attention to the rumors about him and heed them as a warning, I retorted. Perhaps you should, he replied coldly. Just then, there was a knock on the carriage door. The prince leaned his head in. My mask, sir, he said, extending his hand to the masked guard singing with me. Wait, what was going on? Oh, yes, right, I almost forgot. Thank you. You and your mask have been most helpful today, Jasper, and this little conversation has been most enlightening. He snarked, shooting a cold look in my direction. Glad to be of service, Jasper replied, taking his mask and closing the door. Oh my God. The prince? Although I desperately wanted to see his face, I was scared to look up after everything that I had allowed to slip out of my big mouth. I felt like a fool. I wear the mask and let a trusted member of my guard, such as Jasper, take my place occasionally, thus allowing very few to know my true identity. It not only allows me to better ensure the safety of my men, but allows me candid glimpses into what and who is real. Take you, for example. You wouldn't have felt comfortable divulging everything that you did, knowing I was the prince. I apologize, Your Grace. Edward, you may call me Edward. And if I decide I do in fact like you and don't want to disregard you like some broken toy, possibly Eddie someday. However, we are a long way off from that currently. Yes, Your Grace. Edward, I said, glancing up at him briefly before quickly looking away. My God, did he have to be so handsome? My mind was racing, and the awkward silence that lingered for the remainder of the ride allowed me to get lost in my thoughts. I was jolted back to reality as the carriage came to a halt. I will allow Jasper to show you to your room, given your current distaste for me, Edward said, extending his hand to help me out of the carriage. I apologize for anything I may have said out of line, or to offend you, I said, attempting to mask my embarrassment. With that, he nodded and disappeared off with several of the guards. I couldn't help but feel awful. I didn't dislike the prince, and definitely didn't mean to make him feel that way. I didn't even know him. My jaw dropped as Jasper opened the door to my room. To say it was stunning would be an understatement. The carvings on the wooden four-post bed were immaculately done with fine detailing that matched the rest of the elegant furniture. The curtains on the bay-side window blew in the gentle breeze, gliding against the window seat below. I could see the entire yard from the window, including the prince. He was with several members of the guard, gearing up at what appeared to be an archery range. Is everything to your liking? Jasper inquired. Yes, it's perfect, thanks. Great. Is there anything else you would need? Can you tell me about the prince? What do you want to know? I don't know. What is he really like? I've heard the rumors, but they're exactly that, just rumors. I guess I'm wondering what I should prepare myself for. Is he kind? Or is he as cold and emotionless as they say? Does he have a sense of humor? A sense of adventure? Or am I expected to sit quietly and only interact with him when he gives me orders? Because if I'm being honest, I don't know how good I'd be at that. Jasper laughed, silencing my rambling. He came to stand beside me by the window. You will find that all out in good time, don't worry. However, I'll be around if you feel you are needing anything until then, Jasper reassured me. How about a friend? I replied shyly. I can do that too, he said with a kind smile. Just then, we both froze as the prince turned, staring up at us from the courtyard below. I wasn't sure how to react to his stare, so I looked at Jasper. And that's my cue. I better go. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Here's your new phone. My number is programmed in it already. So feel free to text me if you should need anything at all. A maid will be in to check on you in a bit, he explained. I nodded. Thanks, Jasper. My pleasure, he replied before disappearing out into the long hallway. As I glanced back out of the window, I was surprised to see the prince was still staring up at me. As soon as he saw me look in his direction, he turned away. I couldn't help but wonder what that was all about. After exploring the room, in an attempt to become more familiar with my surroundings, I laid on my bed, staring up at the gorgeous mural painted on the ceiling. My mind began to drift. I couldn't help but think how odd it was that out of all the towns and all the girls, it was me who was being sucked into this modern-day fairy tale. This was something that only happened once every 25 to 35 years, when a new prince turned 25 years of age and was approaching the commencement of his crowning. Perhaps the old world ways and the king's reign were still accepted here as the norm, amongst the surrounding small towns, as this was the way it had been for the last 300 years. Or perhaps it was due to the fact that several of the past kings' demonstrations of generosity had saved one town or another from poverty and war over the years. Either way, this is just how it worked in our small corner of the world. However, Prince Edward was now 27, and yet to complete the ceremony to name him the new king. This was due to the fact that his father, the previous king, had passed away a couple months before Edward's 25th birthday. Everyone understood that the royal family was grieving, yet no one really knew what to expect, or when Edward would choose his bride so that he could accept the role as king. The royal family had never released any sort of statement. So here I was, thrust unexpectedly into the situation just hours ago. Now, lying on the bed alone with my thoughts, I've come to the very sobering reality that I have no idea what I should be doing or what to expect. I jumped as the door rattled with a soft knock. As I opened it, a young girl who looked no more than 18 introduced herself as my maid. She explained that her name was Belinda, and she served only the prince and myself. She seemed nervous, so I asked her to tell me about herself, seeing as how we would be seeing a lot of one another. "I really should be heading down to help set up for dinner now," she said, glancing at her watch. I glanced at the time on my phone, only to discover that we had spent the better part of the afternoon chatting. Of course, I hadn't realized it had gotten so late. "It was a pleasure meeting you. Oh, and Stella, I'm really glad that you're you, not one of those horrid stuck-up girls I was worrying that he was going to choose," Belinda said with a smile. "Thanks. I like you too," I reassured her. I was happy to know that I would see at least one friendly face daily, considering things with the prince were currently a bit, bumpy. About an hour went by before Belinda returned to escort me down to dinner. Jasper and two other men stood guard at the door, and Belinda went to fetch the food. By the time Belinda returned with it, the prince still hadn't shown up. I felt awkward sitting at the big table all alone. "Is there something wrong with the food?" Belinda asked when she noticed I had not touched it. "No, I was just waiting for Edward. I didn't want to be rude. Do you know where he is?" "I haven't seen him since you two arrived earlier," she informed me. "Perhaps Jasper knows?" I questioned. "Perhaps. I'll go get him," she said before hurrying off in his direction. In less than a minute, Jasper had made his way over to me. "I was informed Edward will be eating later. He wanted to give you your space this evening. He mentioned something about your conversation and a rough start. He seemed to think you'd prefer it this way." Jasper informed me, clearly uncomfortable. I was worried he had gotten the wrong impression earlier. Seems as though I was right. I sighed. "Jasper, is there any way you could take me to talk to him?" A smile spread across Jasper's face. "Yes, I'm happy that you suggested it. Between me and you, although he didn't say it directly, it was quite apparent Edward was unhappy with the situation. In fact, so much so it seemed to be affecting his mood, which is a rare occurrence for him. Not much really seems to really have an effect on him since—" He hesitated, as if realizing he had already said too much, and shouldn't divulge any more. "Well, you can't say all of that and then not finish your thought. Since what?" I urged. "Yes, I suppose you're right. Since the king passed away," he continued. "I understand. And I understand how hard it must have been for Edward to lose his father, as I lost both of my parents last year. My deepest sympathies. I'm glad you can relate, however. He needs someone like you. Okay, here we are," he said, knocking and opening the door to the study. "Oh, and Stella? Promise me you won't say a word about our little conversation." "I promise," I replied with a little smile. As I turned to walk towards Edward, he was now staring. A wave of nervousness hit me like a brick wall. "Was there a problem with dinner?" he inquired as I approached. I nodded. "Yes, you." "Excuse me?" "I just meant the problem was that I had been looking forward to you being there. Seeing as how you weren't, I thought I should come and make sure everything was okay, and I wasn't the cause of your absence," I explained. "That's a surprise." he muttered under his breath before continuing. Everything is fine, now if there's nothing else. I knew where he was going with this. He was trying to get me to leave him alone. If that was truly what he wanted, he had picked the wrong girl. There is something else. I'd love it if you'd join me, I was saying when he cut me off. I have work to do. Go in and enjoy your dinner. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, in that case, I think I'm just going to go turn in for the night. I wasn't that hungry anyway, I said with hopes of getting him to change his mind. When he didn't respond, I took my leave, feeling defeated. Belinda will escort you back to your room. I'm going to stay and have a little chat with Eddie, Jasper said with a wink. Once back in my room, I grabbed a sweater and headed out to the balcony. The twinkling of the stars reminded me that, while my world may have been turned upside down, some things were still the same. I just about fell over the balcony, startled by a voice behind me. Mind if I join you? Edward asked. Sure. He approached and stood silently beside me. So, he doesn't totally hate me after all, I said jokingly. Me? Hate you? I think you have that backwards. He scoffed. I may be blonde, but I'm fairly certain I know my own feelings, I teased. And what might those be? He questioned, cocking his head to the side. Just great. I had put my foot in my mouth, so to speak. I had no idea how to put into words what I was feeling. However, I knew what I wasn't feeling, so I went with that. Look, I know we got off on the wrong foot earlier, but I wanted to be abundantly clear that when you asked me what I had heard about you, that is exactly what I told you. Those are not, my thoughts or feelings towards you whatsoever. Okay. What are your thoughts or feelings towards me then? Well, I don't really like to form opinions without having evidence first, but may I speak honestly? He nodded. I get the impression you're one who tends to speak her mind regardless of what others have to say. Don't let me stop you. Hey! I exclaimed, pretending to be offended. However, it was short-lived, as I couldn't hold back the smirk on my face. I mean, you're not wrong. What can I say? At least I'm honest. Okay, let's hear this honesty, he urged. Well, so far, I see a man who is guarded, not quick to let people get close to him, who carries the weight of the world on his shoulders, yet does his best to conceal it, who is fair and allows others the chance to explain themselves when need be, and who actually cares what others think, although he doesn't act like it. Not bad, except for one part. Oh yeah? Which part was that? It's not an act. I really don't care what others think. Oh, I said, taken back, feeling a bit foolish I had misread the situation. Let me rephrase. There are very few people in this world whose opinions matter to me, just those closest to me. There are far too many judgmental people out there who criticize without fully understanding or knowing, whose opinions of me change as often as the wind changes direction. I simply do not have the time or desire to dote on such matters, if that makes sense. Yes, I understand, I said, gazing off into the distance. I was shocked when he placed his hand on mine. Do you understand? Do you understand that you're in the group of the few that I do care about? I looked at him wide-eyed. Don't look so surprised. I chose you, remember? Which means not only did I have my guards find out everything they could about you, but I personally watched you firsthand for over a week before making my decision. So, where you may feel that we're total strangers, I in fact know quite a bit about you, he clarified. Well, that doesn't seem fair, now does it? I teased. Okay, what do you want to know? Everything, but a lot of that will come in time, I suppose. For now, tell me about what makes you, you. Your likes, dislikes, your family. By the time Edward and I went back in, the sun was starting to come up. I think it was safe to say that we now knew everything from each other's favorite foods and colors, and pet peeves to each other's desires and dreams. The way the conversation flowed and the secrets that we shared, it felt like we had known each other forever. Dare I say, it felt like I was actually starting to fall for this man. Could something like that really happen this quickly, though? Chapter 3. That morning, as I entered the dining hall for breakfast, our eyes met instantly. I couldn't help but smile at the twinkle in his eye. Just then, Jasper stepped in. Announcing Sir Dimitri, he said in the most formal voice I had yet to hear him use. As the ruggedly handsome man appeared in the doorway, my jaw dropped. Stella? He exclaimed. Dee? I said, rushing to him. He picked me up, spun me around, before stepping back to take a good look at me. You look amazing. Thanks. You don't look so bad yourself, I said, blushing. How's the family? Mom still making her famous pies? With that, I averted my gaze, with hopes of being able to hold it together. It had been a year since the accident, but it was still difficult to talk about. What's wrong? Did something happen? I nodded, sucking in a deep breath. Last year, there was an accident. They didn't make it. Oh, Stella, I'm so sorry. Come here, he said, wrapping his arms around me and pulling me in. Dimitri and I had been good friends in our teenage years, before he and his family moved away. He was always like a big brother to me. He loved my parents as much as they loved him. His own parents were away a lot on official royal business. They worked for the crown in some capacity, but we never really discussed what exactly it was that they did. I was drawn back to reality by Eddie clearing his throat. My apologies, cousin. It's just I haven't seen Stella for years. I never would have expected to see her here. But we could chat about that later. How are you? He said, approaching Eddie. I wasn't exactly sure what the look was Eddie now had on his face, but he didn't seem amused, and the happy glint in his eye was long gone. Come, let's discuss the news you bring in the study. Jasper, please get one of the maids to bring breakfast over there, Eddie said, standing. It almost felt as though he were intentionally avoiding eye contact with me. Stella, don't go far. I'll be finding you later to catch up, Dee called out as he followed Eddie out of the room. Lunchtime rolled around, and they had yet to emerge from the study. By the time the clock struck 2, I was tired of waiting around. Jasper, what might one do around here to pass the time? I inquired, secretly hoping he would have a suggestion that he would be accompanying me in doing. Well, that really depends on what you're in the mood for. You can go for a walk in the gardens, take a swim, let your creativity flow in the painting room, read a good book in the library. I was pondering all the suggestions he was giving me when the archery range caught my eye. What about that? I questioned. Archery? That is a bit more like battle preparation than a leisurely activity, wouldn't you say? So are you saying I can't do it? No, you most certainly can. It's just the prince has never had a girl on his archery range before, he attempted to explain. Well, there's a first time for everything, right? I countered back. Yes, I suppose you're right. I'll prepare your gear, he said a bit hesitantly. Would you like me to show you what to do? He questioned as he helped me with the gear. No, I'm sure I can manage to figure it out, I replied with a smirk. After hitting the target flawlessly with all the arrows, Jasper ran out to collect them. It seems as though someone has a secret skill. Any other secrets you care to share? He asked teasingly. Not currently, I teased back. I drew another arrow, anchored it at the corner of my mouth, and released, hitting the target dead center once again. That's right, just like I taught you, Dee exclaimed, coming up from behind us. Jasper raised a brow, but didn't say a word. I was surprised when Eddie walked right past me, acting as if I didn't exist. He said something to Jasper and began to walk away again. Well, I must apologize, but duty calls. I'm sure I'm leaving you in very capable hands, he said, nodding towards Dee, before following Eddie back inside. I know I'm not the only one who felt the awkwardness there. What's up? You and the prince not hitting it off? Dee questioned. Well, I'm actually not sure. We literally stayed up all night last night talking about anything and everything. And I thought we were in a good place when we parted ways. However, everything seemed to change at breakfast, I explained. You mean when I arrived? I thought about it for a moment. You're actually not wrong. Why do you think that is? Do you think he's embarrassed of me? And, on another note, why didn't you ever tell me that you were cousins with a prince? Why on earth would he be embarrassed of you? You've grown into an absolutely stunning woman. And I never told you that he is my cousin, as it isn't something that we're supposed to go flaunting. If the wrong person or group of people caught wind that we were related to the crown, that not only puts us in danger, but the crown at risk of being strong-armed as well. And that makes sense. So, what do you think the prince's deal is now? Why do you think he's treating me so coldly all of a sudden? I asked, not able to get it off my mind. You know, I'm not sure, but I promise to help you find out, he replied assuringly. We walked up to the large wraparound porch, and Dee sat on a comfy-looking cushioned chair, and I on the porch swing. You know the rumors about the prince aren't true, right? Yeah, I know. I could tell he's a good guy under the tough demeanor he is forced to put on. But, specifically, which rumors are you referring to? I questioned. Oh, which ones have you heard? He questioned back. Let's see. That he's bitter and mean, incapable of any real feelings or emotions? I was saying when a noise came from behind us. Seeing the look of hurt and disappointment on Eddie's face was the worst, and I could only imagine what he had thought he had heard. As he turned to walk away, I hurried after him. Eddie, wait! I don't know what you think you heard, but I can assure you that it was nothing more than a case of bad timing. I would never say anything bad about you, I promise. I attempted to explain. You know, maybe there's truth to the rumors. I couldn't care less what anyone, and I mean anyone, thinks of me, he said, looking at me pointedly. My jaw dropped as he stormed away. Chapter 4. That night, Eddie was absent from dinner yet again. At least I had Dee to keep me company this time. However, that didn't help much with the guilt I was now feeling, knowing I had accidentally managed to upset Eddie once again. Maybe I wasn't the right girl to be by his side after all. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't that I didn't like the prince. I was actually starting to grow quite fond of him after our all-night chat. Adding to my growing fondness were the bits and pieces of information that the Saps secretly divulged to me when they found themselves alone with me. He was interesting and sincere, not to mention incredibly handsome. However, he'd been through a lot, and he needed somebody by his side that could bring a little happiness back into his life. As for me, it felt like I was doing more harm than good since I had gotten here. I knew Dee had gone to explain to Eddie what had really been said in our conversation that he had walked in on earlier. However, Eddie's lack of attendance at dinner proved it hadn't done much good. Too guilty to sleep, and fairly certain he wouldn't see me even if I tried, I decided to write Eddie a quick note. It read, I realize you probably don't want to speak to me, so I've decided to write you this little note instead. I just want you to know that your absence today didn't go unnoticed. I want to apologize again for what you overheard yesterday, and reassure you it was not as it sounded. It was quite the opposite, in fact. Anyway, good night and sweet dreams. I hope to see you tomorrow. Jasper, will you please make sure Eddie gets this? Right away. I'm actually on my way to him now, Jasper replied with a knowing smile. The next day, I was greatly disappointed when both breakfast and lunch had gone by, and there was still no sign of Eddie. Care to accompany me on a hike? Dee asked as we finished up lunch. Sure, that sounds nice. I'd love to explore some more. The trail was beautiful. It was sprinkled with majestic trees and a stream that waterfalled down the rocks. Hey, just out of curiosity, have you seen Eddie today? Dee asked seemingly out of nowhere. Actually, I have not. Have you? No. He wouldn't even take our scheduled meeting today, which is highly unusual for him. In fact, Jasper informed me that Eddie had actually canceled all meetings for both today and tomorrow. There was something about the way Jasper said it that made it seem like something was up. Any guesses? I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I'm new here, remember? But if I had to guess, I would say it might have something to do with the less than delightful impression I've made on the prince, I replied. I have to admit, it doesn't seem as though it has been the best start. However, whatever is going on seems a bit bigger than just that, Dee reassured me. As we continued along the trail, a small side path that led to a flowery henge came into view. What's over there? The king, Dee replied. I raised my brow questioningly. Dee led the way down the small path. On the other side of the henge was a marble headstone marking the resting place of the late king, Marcellus. A few feet away, there stood an elegant sculpture of him. As I turned back and read the headstone, everything made sense. The date of death read April 15th. That was tomorrow. With Eddie's mom moving overseas 6 months ago, this was going to be the first anniversary of his father's passing, which he was going to have to endure on his own. I didn't care what it was going to take. I was going to do everything in my power to ensure he wouldn't be alone tomorrow. I figured if I wanted to have any success with Eddie tomorrow, I better start laying out the groundwork quickly. That evening, I asked Jasper and Belinda if it would be possible for me to take Eddie his dinner. They shared a smile and agreed to help me. As Jasper walked me down the long corridor towards Eddie's chambers, I almost couldn't take the nervousness enveloping me. Do you think he'll be upset to see me? Quite the opposite, I believe, Jasper said in a reassuring tone. Really? I questioned, hesitant to believe his words. Yes, really. This is a stay between just me and you, but he has given me strict orders to not allow anyone into his chambers aside from you. He then paused, turning to face me before continuing. I'm really glad that you've decided to go to him. This is a harder time for him than you know. I gave a reassuring smile as Jasper knocked on the door. Come in, Eddie called. His voice sounded a bit different than normal. I entered nervously, setting his dinner down on the table. Eddie was lying on his back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. He hadn't noticed it was me yet. I hope you don't mind that I brought you your dinner. With that, he sat up and looked at me wide-eyed for a moment before his expression turned stoic yet again. What do you want? Why are you here? He asked coldly. Well, hello to you too. I was just worried about you. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I don't need you worrying about me. Okay. Well, thanks for that input. However, I seem to misplace the off switch for my feelings, so I regretfully must inform you that you're just going to have to deal with it for the time being. I sassed. He let out an annoyed huff. Eddie, look, if you're so upset about what you overheard the other night, I told you it was a big misunderstanding, and I already apologized. What else do you want me to do? Not everything's about you, okay? He said, running his hands over his face. I could see tears glistening in his eyes. Seeing that, something in me snapped, and I mindlessly hurried to his side. I wrapped my arms around him, fully expecting to be shrugged off. I was pleasantly surprised when his arms enveloped me in a tight embrace. My fingers played in his hair as he rested his head against mine. I couldn't help but think it felt like the perfect fit. As he let go, I figured I'd better not overstay my welcome. Well, enjoy your dinner. See you tomorrow, I said with a smile before hurrying out. I knew Dee should be getting back any time now, from the little mission I had set him on. If he was successful, I would need to come up with a plan for tomorrow. Okay, Midnight Readers, that is a wrap for today. Tune in Thursday for more of Royally Surprised.